Hi everyone, I'm Gaston Gaitan and I wanted to share with everyone this project that I carried out for university. This is the final project for the Programming 3 assignment, and I had many options to choose about which kind of application would I have to create for the final project for the assignment. And I decided to get into a home banking project, a desktop app, home banking application. Mostly because I have been thinking about doing this for a long time before, right? Before having this assignment, I was already thinking about what kind of application could I develop with everything that I've learned on my career up to this point, right? So to summarize the application in general, this is just a Java application whose interface is created in the swing using the Swing library from Java. And the idea of this application is to manage the logic and the user interface with Java, and while connecting to a PostgreSQL database that is contained in a Docker container, right? That is at the same time running in a Linux server and putting all together so that we can manage, delete, update, and etc. the data that is in the Postgres database using the Java Swing interface that I created, right? So then, just to summarize what I was already saying, the general project infrastructure is about PostgreSQL database that runs in a Docker container in a Linux environment, and it is connected with a desktop application that is created in Java. And the last thing that I'd like to share in this PowerPoint is the entity relationship diagram. It's just to show how we structure the database with which we will be interacting using the application, right? We have the client table that connects with the client data. There is only one-on-one relationship. Also, let's just separate this because I think that it will be more comfortable for me to have this data that is more crucial for the system to work, right? We need all this data for to create all the relationships, right? But this data is just like personal data, it's not too relevant for the system. Okay, so and also the client has one to many accounts, right? The client must have at least one account, but it also can have many accounts. It can have an account in USD or pesos, and also at the same time an account can have a none or multiple transactions, right? But every transaction must be aligned with at least uh, one account, right? With many accounts, right? Because we have the region in this account. And here this account transaction table is used to connect both account and transaction tables, right? To solve the issue of the many to many relationship. And well, mm, now that we're done with this, I will share the application functioning. Here to summarize the structure that we have here is that I use the Spring initializer, right? Mostly because it was more comfortable for me to add the dependencies, right? Here's the Postgre extension, right? So I just added that dependency here, and well, it was more comfortable for me. And also here we have each table, as I showed previously, right? Each table is an object here in the system, right? We have the account transaction, the client data, right? And then we have a combination of transaction data that is a combination of client data and transaction, right? The sorry, that is a combination of the transaction and the con-transaction, right? Mostly because it was more comfortable for me to take this data from here and put it into the interface. Well, then um, also to get an introduction about how it works is that the frame, many functions here in the component creator, we receive the shape frame, the frame, right, of the application as if it was a ball, and it will modify the frame, right? And also depending on the kind of on the section where we are, we will receive, for instance, our reference value, right? If we get into the client section, we will need the client ID, right, to get all the client information. So here's the application running. We can access as administrator or as a client. This will be as a bank employee. Let's get into it. So we will have to access the username and the password, and just to add that we have these back buttons to navigate in the application. If we put the password wrong and the credentials wrong, we will receive this warning. We can but now we will access as we should. Here we can log in, and here we will get this panel. Here in this part, we will receive the dollar exchange rate here. Mostly because the transaction in this bank are performed between USD and pesos account, and the money can be converted when we make the transaction. Right, if we send dollars to pesos, they will be converted into pesos, and the other way around, right? If we send pesos to USD. So, for instance, we can create clients, we can create accounts for clients, and for instance, we can also check the information for each client, right? So here we have the personal information that is on client data, and also we have the transaction history, right? Every time that we send money, every transaction will be saved, and also it will update the money that we have in our accounts, in our accounts, right? So for instance, also we can delete users, we can create accounts for our users. So for instance, let's delete the user number one. Delete, are you sure you want to limit the client number one? Delete user one. Okay, now we don't see the user. Okay, this has been deleted from the database. And then now, for instance, let's create a new client. So here, for instance, we're going to create this client, this user with with all this, sorry, with all this information. We will create it as a personal type. The initial account will be in pesos, and the initial salary will be 100,000 pesos. So let's create the client. Okay, done. So now, as you can see, we have this new client created, right? And if we access to the information, we have this new account that has been created for this user, for this client, sorry. So now let's also create a new account for this client, right? We have this one that has only one pesos account, but let's add a new account in USD. Client ID 10, because we have to add the client ID, right, to create the account, because it's the primary key of the client, right? It was 10. Sorry, salary $1,000, and account currency in USD. Create account. The account has been created successfully. Alright, and we access to the user for account. Sorry, and when we access to the client panel for this client, we will see that we have this new USD account. Okay, so let's access as the user full, and let's send money to this account number 11, right?
user 4, user 4 as password, login. So here we have, and here when we access this client, the main difference that we have from the administrator panel is that when we have this information and so forth, we also can send money between accounts, right? So here we have, we can send, for instance, money to any of the account from the other users, right? So let's select, for instance, the account number 11, amount to send. Let's send 1,000 pesos, right? 1,000 pesos have been sent to account. Okay, so good. And let's say that we want to send 1 USD, right? Or 10 USD to another account, right? Let's send 5, sorry. If we select, for instance, again the account ID 11 and we send $5, right? As you can see, we have sent from a dollar account to a pesos account, and the money has been converted in this case. So here, for instance, we have lost $5, but at the same time, we have sent 5,000 pesos to the account from the other client. So let's check how is things on the other client side, right? Here, for instance, is the client that has received the money, and as you can see, this will say 1,000 pesos has been added, 5,000 pesos has been added, has been received, sorry, from this other account, right? And this is the account 11 that has received the money. So also here for the final part, I would like to share how my server and the Docker container that is running the database that is connected to the app. I am right now connected to my server via SSH protocol. Now, for instance, here's the container that is running the Docker image to which we are connecting on the application. Now, if I access to the container bash, right, I can access to the database and see all the data that is stored, right? For instance, select from client. Sorry. As you can see, we have the 2 users. Also, here we have the client data for each of the users. The accounts that are not deleted because otherwise we will lose, because we still want to have this information for the transactions. So that's the reason why there are so many accounts, right? These are the accounts that I had created before, but then got deleted because I deleted the clients. Now here we have the transaction information. And here is the final information of the transaction, right? This is the first transaction, the amount of money that was sent, right, and so forth. Okay. Um, anything else? Something that I think that I should do for this project is to create another table with information of the client and client data that were deleted, right? So as to keep the data from all the clients that were part of the application. But well, we can improve it. We can to illustrate some things that I was talking about before. I would like to share um, how the code works for this part of the project, that is the client, the the part where we are able to create a client as an administrator. So we have all these text fields that we will have to fulfill, and this is called in this part. This is made in this part of the code, right? This method will be called, that will be the get the new client, get add new client panel. This will receive the frame, and as you can see, this is going to add some features to the frame, right? Like the email text field, username text fields, etc. And in the last part, also it adds this client, right? This client, this create client button has a method, right? This method, what does is that it takes information for all the text fields, right? And then connect to the database that is here running on this server, right? Connects to this database, and then it stores the data into the database. Okay, so after we have, for instance, after we have fulfilled all these text fields and we click this create new client, this is what is going to happen in the application. What this does is that it creates a new object that is this create this DAO, this client DAO PostgreSQL object. These four objects that you see here are objects that are composed by the driver, the database data, the information of the database to connect to it, and has methods to store data into the database using those attributes, right, to connect to the database, apart from all the functionalities. So, for instance, we create a new DAO client project, right? And here then we create the client object. As I said before, we have each table is an object in our system, and when we want to save this data into the database, we will take the data from this object and put into the queries to insert the data or to delete or to look for the data and etc. So here we parse and change the format the date that we have here in this part, right? I specified the date format that needs to be fulfilled, otherwise you will receive an error. We will create the client data object, and remember that client and client data are separated because this is crucial information for the system. This is not too crucial information for the system. At least where I work, that's how they store the data. In fact, we don't have the, for instance, for a client we don't, or for a customer, because we use the entity customer, we don't have personal data of on the customer table, right? We have only the raw data that is important for the system to work, right? And then we have all the data and all the parts of the database where we store the personal data from that customer. So once we have created the client data, we also create an account object, right? And that account object is going to take the account currency, the initial salary, and then okay, this I have these logs for debugging reasons. Um, okay, so now when we have the client data and account object created, we will call to the client DAO PostgreSQL SQL and its method to save this data. This is wrong, right? I should have written this in English now, right? But okay, for the next time I will try to be more concise in with my code. That's my mistake, but well, this is working fine by the moment, so I will share it anyways. Now, for instance, here we have the client Java. No, this so well, this is the object that allow us to connect to the database and store data, right?
or look for data, because it also have some search and delete methods apart from saving. So, for instance, we what we do is that we have um, an error handling structure to, because we will receive an error to receive an error if anything goes wrong, right? We can read on the console what happened on the saving process. Here, for instance, we have the driver, right? That we have that we will use to connect to the Postgres database, right? As you can see, or the PostgreSQL driver, right? And this is what we had added on the POM XML file. Uh, so now also we have the connection, and here we will connect using the URL of the database user, and the database password. This is personal for you. I'm going to delete this data before uploading this to GitHub for security reasons, right? So it has these four attributes, and these four attributes gives it the data to connect to the database. So this object has these four attributes, right? That allow us to connect to the database. So here we have this prepare statement that was null first, and now this is the query that we're going to throw into the database to store the data, right? And as you can see, we have the insert, the into client, we will take the the client tab, username, email, password, and so forth. And we're going to insert four values. So here we have the prepare statement. We will set the string, right? For the first question mark value, we will use the getters, the getter for the client type, and so forth. We will use the corresponding setter for each field, right? And once the prepare statement has all the parameters defined, right? We will execute the update, right? So it is carry out the update on the query, and then we will receive the result from the keys, and in this way we will continue increasing we will save the client ID, because then we will need it to connect with the client data with the client data that we're going to store. Same thing happens here. Client data DAO PostgreSQL, right? We're calling this method this sorry we're calling this method of this object inside the method of this object. And the same happens with the count, right? We will save the count, the client the account, the client data, and so forth, and then the statement will get closed, right? And in that way is at least how we save all this data and the account data, right? For each one of the uh, clients. So well, I think that this is done by the moment. Hope the person who is watching this has found this at least a little bit interesting, because I'm very proud of this project and all the improvements that I made on these years. And well, thanks for watching and have a great day.